न्येष्विचार्यतूर्णं स्तम्भेऽवतारस्तवनन्यलभ्यं लक्ष्मीनृसिंहं शरणं प्रपद्ये। श्रीमान् वेङ्कटनाथार्य कवितार्किकेसरी वेदान्ताचार्यवर्यो मे सन्निधत्तां सदा हृदि प्रपद्ये निरवद्यानां निषद्यां गुणसम्पदां शरणं भवभीतानां षठकोपमुनीश्वरं श्रीरङ्गनाथ षठकोपयतीन्द्रदृष्टं लक्ष्मीनृसिंहशरयत्करुणैकपात्रम् श्रीरङ्गवीररघुराट् षठकोपहृद्यं वेदान्तदेशिकयतीन्द्रमहं प्रपद्ये। श्रीमद्रङ्गजठारिसंयमिवराल्लब्धागमान्तद्वयं श्रीमद्वीररघूद्वहाद्यषडजित्पादारविन्दाश्रयं श्रीमद्वेदवतं सुदेशिकेतेः कारुण्यवीक्षास्पदं सेवे रङ्गधुरीणशासनवशं नारायणं योगिनं वेदान्तदेशिकेतीशकटाक्षलब्धत्रय्यन्तसारमनवद्यगुणं बुधाग्र्यं नारायणाद्येति दुर्यकृपाभिषिक्तं श्रीरङ्गनाथयतिशेखरमाश्रयामः। श्रीमते श्रीवंशटगोपश्री वेदान्तदेशिकेतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः। श्रीमते श्रीलक्ष्मीनृसिंहदिव्यपादुका सेवक श्रीवंशटगोपश्री नारायणयतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः। श्रीमते श्रीवंशटगोपश्री रङ्गनाथयतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः. Welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining yet another session of our Saturday Ahobila Mutt storytelling sessions. We've all had a lot of enjoyable sessions so far. Today we are going to talk about again a couple of stories. Both the stories we will talk about are very closely related to each other, but the main story we will talk about today is the one that you see on the screen. This is the story of two people, of Indra and Virochana. Okay, and the theme of the story that we will learn about, by going through the details of what happened, where it came from, and so on and so forth. The theme that I'd like to discuss with you all is what is the right way to learn. Okay, the story of Indra and Virochana is going to tell us some interesting messages, some interesting things that we need to know about. How should we go to a teacher? How should we expect to learn from a teacher, and what is the right way to learn? Okay, so in a way, that's why I put it on the slide saying the story of Indra and Virochana. What we are trying to do is we are going to try to learn how to learn. Okay, so as usual, what is the source of the story? Where does the story come from? Okay, the story comes from the Upanishads, and more specifically, the story comes from the Chandogya Upanishad. Okay, in the past, when we have learned about other stories, we have also seen in the past some other stories that have come from the Chandogya Upanishad as well. This is another story that is talked about in the Chandogya Upanishad, and it's a relatively well-known story. Okay, well-known story in the sense that this is an important story that the Chandogya Upanishad talks about. Okay, now the one thing that I want to tell you before we go into the story is that some of the details of what this story is about may be a little bit complicated to understand. Okay, so just be prepared to think about some relatively abstract concepts, which is what the story is about. But the inner meaning of the story is not, you won't necessarily lose the inner meaning of the story if you don't understand the exact concepts that people are talking about. Okay, so the characters in the story are going to talk about some really abstract things that we may or may not be able to relate to, may or may not have thought about before. But I still wanted to talk to you guys about the story, because some of these concepts are worth thinking about in their own right. But still, even if you don't understand the concept, you will still get what the story is about. Okay, so bear with me in case some of these things don't sound very easy to understand. But as always, if there is something that you don't understand, raise your hand, stop me, and we can always discuss it in whatever amount of detail. Okay, we can either discuss it in detail here or offline or whatever. So just bear in mind that there will be some abstract concepts to think about in today's story. Okay, so the story is in the Chandogya Upanishad, and as you know, a lot of the Upanishads, the text of the Upanishads tell us about Perumal. They tell us about the Atma. They tell us about the universe. They tell us about the real deep meaning of why we exist. But when they tell us all of these very difficult things, many a time they tell us through stories. They tell us these things through stories. They tell us, oh, this happened in the past. This person spoke to another person. When they spoke to each other, this is the message that came out. And therefore, you guys should learn about this. That's the way. In fact, every Saturday we get together to think about stories. That's in fact the approach that the Upanishads have generally taken. They tell us these abstract things through stories. Okay, so this Chandogya Upanishad, this particular story that from the Chandogya Upanishad involves a few characters. Now you can already guess. You've seen from the title slide, right? Two characters we've already talked about. But the other character that who binds the story together is who is referred to as Prajapati or Brahma. Okay, and Brahma is also referred to in many places as Prajapati, because he's the one who Perumal created to create the rest of the universe. Literally, the name Prajapati means someone who creates a lot of things. Okay, so that's why Brahma has the name Prajapati, and then he had two people who were trying to learn something from him. So those are the other two characters. So the first character is Prajapati. The other two characters are this Asura called Virochana and Indra, who is the king of the gods. Okay, so in a way that the story is an interesting one, because Brahma is the one teaching it, and the people who are coming to learn from him are in fact diametrically opposite in the way they think. Indra is the king of the gods. He's the king of the devas, right? The devas, generally speaking, the devas represent whatever is good in the world. Okay, they follow the path of what is to be righteous. They are the people who take care of the world, like all the day-to-day things. The things like the sun god is one of the devas. The rain god is one of the devas. So they are the people who make things work in the universe, and they are supposed to be representatives of whatever is good. Okay, so that is one of the disciples that this Prajapati had, and this other person was completely opposite end. He was an asura. Now, even Virochana, this particular asuras in general, they represent what is evil or what is bad in the world, but there are always exceptions to that as well, right? So Virochana is in a way an exception to that, and that is why he was so interested in learning this thing from Prajapati. So anyway, the three characters that come in the story are Brahma or Prajapati. There is the king of the asuras, whose name is Virochana, and the king of the devas, who we all know, his name is Indra. Okay, so these are the characters in the story. So what brought them together, and what is the story? So the story is about how Indra and Virochana came to Prajapati to learn something. Okay, so what did they want to learn, and why did they want to learn this? That is the question. Okay, so the Chandogya Upanishad tells us that the Prajapati or Brahma, at one point in time, he made an announcement, or he told the people in general that, look, if you want to get whatever you really like, okay, a lot of us want so many things, right? We want to go to a good school, we want to, some people want to earn a lot of money, some people want to be have a good job, all of those things. So Prajapati made an announcement. He said, if you really want to get something, and if you want to achieve whatever you want, you have to learn one thing. Okay, if you learn about the true nature of Perumal and the true nature of your own Atma, okay, if you learn these things, then you will achieve whatever you want. That's what he said. That this is the announcement that Brahma made. So both of these guys, Indra and Virochana, both of them got really interested, because they like everybody in the world, right? Everybody has some desires. Everybody has something they want. And when Brahma made this announcement that if you learn about the Atma, if you learn about Perumal, if you learn about the relationship between Perumal and the Atma, you will get whatever you want. They both got very interested. They said, okay, you know what? I want to go and learn this from Prajapati. I want to go to Brahma and learn this. Okay, so both of them got very interested, and they went to Brahma and said, Brahma, I want to learn this from, or I've come here to be your student. Okay, they didn't explicitly say that this is what they wanted to learn, but their objective was to gain whatever they wanted to gain, and therefore they said, okay, let's go and try to learn this. They didn't know why they had to learn it or what, but Brahma has said this, so it must be true, right? So that's why they went. Okay, so Indra and Virochana both went to Brahma and said, I want to learn this. And they started to learn this. And in those days, right, that generally in the past, in the way of the Vedas, when you go and learn something from a guru, it's not like you go to school, right? You go and register yourself in a school, you pay some money, and they start teaching you on the first day. You have to go to the guru. The guru will start. You will have to go and serve the guru, right? You have to do Gurukula Vasa. You go and serve the guru, and the guru will, whenever they are happy with you, because you start by serving the teacher. You don't go and say, oh, here is $100 of fee. Why don't you start teaching me? That's not the way you do it. So both of them knew that. So they went to Brahma, and they just started serving him. Okay, and they started serving him for many years. It wasn't just 1 year or 2 years. They started serving him for a long time, with the view of learning this. Okay, now you may ask a question, right? Like I said before, Indra represents what is good. So it's no surprise that he wants to learn more. He is willing to serve his guru, and he goes to Brahma and wants to be his disciple and all of those things. Virochana is an asura, right? If Virochana is an asura, why would he go to a guru and say, oh, I want to be your disciple, please teach me? He could say, as an asura, he could go and give Brahma one tight slap and say, okay, you tell me this. It seems to be that I need to learn something from you. Why don't you teach me? He could have asked him that way, right? Why did Virochana not do that? Does anybody know what the background of Virochana is? Who is Virochana? Who is his father? Who is his son? Yes.
Virochana's father was Prahladan, and his son was King Bali.
Okay, so just one by one. So who was Virochana's father?
Prahladan.
And Virochana's son was?
Bali.
Excellent. So Virochana's father was Prahladan, and Virochana's son was Mahabali. Okay, so Virochana came from a family which had devotion towards Perumal. So that is why he also was seeking to know the truth, and he wanted to learn it in the right way. Okay, so there again, I mean, like all stories in the Upanishads, right? There is not one message. Like every little part of that story has a message for us. So just because Virochana was an asura doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He just represents things that are bad in the world. But he came from a family that had bhakti to Perumal, and therefore even an asura, if he had bhakti to Perumal, can be a good person, right? So you cannot judge a book by its cover. So that's something that we also learned. But anyway, so good. Everybody knows now that Virochana came from the family of Prahlada and Mahabali. We know that they've both been recipients of Perumal's blessings, and therefore Virochana was learned. Okay, so these guys did not start learning yet, right? They were still serving Brahma, and they served him for 32 years. Okay, in all those 32 years, Brahma did not even take one class. He did not even ask them, why have you come here? They are just coming there to serve him. Somebody is doing all the household jobs. They're saying, okay, great, you come and work here. And after 32 years, Brahma came and said, hey, you guys have been here for 32 years. What do you want? Like you've served me well. I'm happy with your service. Tell me what can I do for you? So at that time, Indra and Virochana, both of them went to Brahma and said, please, can you make sure that I can, that we learn this thing that you announced. You announced 32 years ago that that we have to, if we learn about the Atma, if we learn about God, then we'll get whatever we want. We have been here serving you for 32 years because we want to learn this. And Brahma said, oh, okay, you've been serving me for 32 years. I'm very happy with you. I'll tell you. Okay, you want to learn about Perumal, you want to learn about the Atma, let me tell you about the Atma. Okay? And he said, he made Indra and Virochana sit down, and he told them, you know what the Atma is? Like when you look inside, when you look in a mirror, okay, and you look carefully at your eyeballs, right? You see your own reflection in your eyeballs, correct? When you look at yourself. Brahma said, you know that little thing that you see inside your eyes? That is the Atma. That's all you need to know. Just go and see, that's the Atma. They said, what? I don't understand. I don't really understand. What do you mean? So Brahma said, look, that little image that you see in your eyes, that is the Atma. Don't just take it from me. They still said, I don't understand. What exactly do you mean? So Brahma said, okay, you go now and wear some very good clothes, wear some very good ornaments, sort of dress yourself up well and come back. And they both did that and came back. Then he placed a large pot of water in front of them and he said, look inside that pot. And he said, okay, what do you see? He was looking inside that pot and he said, what do you see? Indra said, oh, I'm wearing this ornament, I'm wearing this garland, I'm wearing this kundalam, all these things. Virochana said, yeah, I'm wearing this, I'm wearing that, I can see all those things. Brahma said, okay, you know what you see inside that pot of water? That is the Atma. That's all you need to know. So Indra and Virochana said, okay, well, fine, okay, we served Brahma for 32 years. He has told us what is the Atma. We saw that if you look inside that big pot of water, I see a reflection. That is the Atma. Okay? So they both went away. Virochana basically decided, okay, this is all there is to know. He said, okay, you know what, Brahma, I served Brahma for 32 years. And you know what he told me about the Atma? This body is the Atma. After all, what did Brahma say? You look inside the pot, whatever reflection you see, whatever image you see, that is the Atma. And if I know this, I know everything else there is to know, because he made an announcement that once you learn this, you'll get whatever you know, whatever you want. And he went back to his kingdom and said, look, I have learned whatever there is to know. This body is the Atma. There is nothing other than this body. Okay? So what is the meaning of that? If there is nothing more than the body to know about, then, okay, if the Vedas say, you have to make sure that the Atma is in a good position. You have to make sure that the Atma you have to look out for the well-being of the Atma, right? So what does Virochana take away from this? Looking out for the well-being of the Atma means looking out for the well-being of your own body. Eat good food, live well, be happy. Just as long as your body is good, you don't need to worry about anything else. That is the message he took away and started living very happily. All he was focused on was to try and make his own body well. So he would make sure that he ate the best of food. He had the best of comforts and all those things. Indra, on the other hand, he went back home and said, what? Okay, when Brahma told me that look in that pot of water, wear this kundalam, wear this jewelry, he said, this is the Atma. I went back home, I took off the kundalam. I took off all this jewelry. So the Atma changes. As I change my clothes, the Atma changes. Don't the Vedas say that the Atma never changes? Because I didn't tell you all the details, but Brahma, when he made this announcement, he said, learn about the Atma that does not change at all. Then you'll get whatever you want. And no, I take off this kundalam, then I look in the same pot of water, the Atma doesn't have kundalam anymore. So does the Atma keep changing? Something in what Brahma said is not right. So he went back to Brahma. Virochana, in the meanwhile, was blissfully unaware. He thought, okay, I have learned everything I need to learn. But he did not think. Indra went back home and started thinking and said, you know what, Brahma has not told me exactly what I need to know. So he went back and started serving Brahma again for 32 years. So he took another 32 years and then Brahma said, oh, you've been here for 32 more years. What can I do for you? Then Indra said, look, you know what? You told me to look inside that pot of water and said that is the Atma. That really doesn't make sense. That means, is the Atma different for any person? Like Virochana saw a different Atma, I saw a different Atma. Does the Atma look different? Said, oh, good. You've been thinking. Let me tell you some more. And he said, oh, you know what? Forget about what I told you then. That's only one part of the story. The real story is that when you go to sleep and you dream, whatever you see in your dreams, Like when we sleep, right? When we're like slightly sleepy, we go to sleep, and we see a lot. We see ourselves in the dream, right? We see us playing cricket. We see somebody beating us up. All those things we see, right? You know, when you see yourself in the dream, that is the Atma. Then Indra said, "Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Obviously, I can take off the clothes and all these things that I was wearing, but in the dream, something naturally happens that doesn't change. So maybe that's the right way to think about the Atma." And he went back home. On his way back home, he's like, "What? That doesn't make sense either. Like today, I see myself wearing veshti in my dream. Tomorrow, I see myself wearing jeans in my dream. So does that still mean that I keep changing? Well, this dream story doesn't make sense." So Indra went back to Brahma. Again, he served him for 32 years. At the end of so by this time, how many years have passed?
96. 96 years.
Okay, 96 years. At the end of 96 years, he said, "Brahma, you know what? You said all the story about dream and all that. That doesn't make sense." He said, "Oh, okay. Good. You've been thinking. I'll tell you some more. That dream is also only part of the story. You know, when you're sleeping very soundly, when you don't know what's going on, when you're sleeping very soundly, the state that you are in, that is when you're experiencing the Atma." And Indra said, "Aha, see, that dream thing was wrong. Now when I sleep very soundly, that's when I'm experiencing the Atma." And he went back home. Again, on the way back home, he's like, "What? When I'm sleeping very soundly, people around me are talking. I don't really hear what they're saying." And so when you're sleeping, the TV is running very loudly. If you're sleeping very soundly, it doesn't disturb you, right? So then he said, "You know what Brahma said in the beginning, that the Atma knows everything. Atma can understand everything around it. When I'm sleeping soundly, I don't even understand anything. That must be wrong." So again, he went back to Brahma. And this time, he was there only for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, Brahma took notice of him. And he said, "Look."
That is for 101 years serving.
Exactly. So he said, "You've been here for 101 years. Now I really know that you really want to know the truth." In the meanwhile, what is Virochana doing? He's having Rasagullas at home. He's thinking that
He just believing the Brahma when the Brahma at first was not really saying the correct meaning of
correct.
Atma.
He thought that the body is the Atma, right? So he's having good food and thinking that it's all good. But he's not going towards the path of the true knowledge. But in the meanwhile, Indra has put in so much effort for 101 years, right? Virochana put only 32 years of effort. This guy put 101 years of effort. At that time, Brahma said, "Okay, now you come to me. I will give you the true knowledge." And he told him about Perumal, he told him about the true nature of the Atma, and the Atma is that it's invariant and all those things. Okay, so it took Indra a lot longer than Virochana to learn this knowledge. But along the way, he persevered. He knew that he had to ask questions. He knew that he had to understand something. If he had a doubt, he had to go ask the teacher. And if he learned true knowledge, and it's not like Brahma was also learning, right? Brahma already knew, right, on the first day that they came, he knew the truth. But he was not giving it to them that easily. He wanted to test them. He wanted to make sure that these guys are really, really worthy of that knowledge. Because if I just show you a pot of water and say, "Look in that," and that is the Atma, immediately we should know that, you know what, it can't be that easy, right? There must be more to it. We have to understand more. And Indra made the investment, but Virochana did not make the investment.
Yeah, Virochana just thought that a water thingy will be your Atma when that was not actually true.
Correct, exactly. So he thought that, but Indra, the efforts that Indra made, they paid off, right? At the end of 101 years, he learned everything that is true. So the Shastras say, this is a verse from the Shandilya Smriti, the Shastras say that, I'll read out the verse to you and I'll tell you what the meaning is. That this verse says, "Samvatsaram tadardham va masatrayamathapi va parikshya vividhopayehi kripaya nispruho vadet." This verse from the Shandilya Smriti is an instruction to the teacher. It's not even an instruction to the student. It's an instruction to the teacher. It says to the teacher, if a student comes to you If a student, and it's not any average student, right? It's not a student coming to you asking to learn about geometry. It's a student coming to you asking to learn about Perumal, about asking you to learn about something that is very lofty, very high, very important. It tells the teacher, don't give that knowledge away to the student that easily. It says, test the student. Test the student at least for 1 year. Samvatsaram means 1 year. Test the student at least for 1 year. Okay, sometimes you say, you know what? Brahma tested Indra for 101 years. Today, if you go to a teacher and the teacher says, I'll test you for 101 years, we won't even live for 101 years. So that's why it says 1 year. So sometimes teachers may say, you know what, 1 year is also a long time. It's very hard to get students these days. So it says, okay, if you can't do 1 year, at least test them for 6 months. Okay, tad ardham va. Ardham means half. So samvatsaram, or at least half of a year, 6 months. We say even 6 months is hard. Masatrayam athapiva, at least 3 months. Without testing your student for at least 3 months, do not give them any information. Do not give them the true knowledge. But on the other hand, if the student passes your test, if they take the time, take the effort, take the energy, and they pass your test, then pariksha vividhopayi. It says test them in many ways. Don't test them just in one way. Like Brahma tested these guys in so many ways, right? It gave them all kinds of wrong knowledge. Now, or incomplete knowledge, not wrong knowledge, but incomplete knowledge. So he says test them in many ways, and once they come out through these tests, kripaya nispraho vadet. He says be very, very kind to them, be very compassionate to them, and give them all the knowledge that you have. Okay, so our acharyas will give us all the knowledge. They are ready to teach us whatever we need to learn, but they will not give it to us without some testing. Okay, so we need to be prepared for that testing, and we need to persevere. Okay, so that is the story that the Chandogya Upanishad gives. Now, this message of the Chandogya Upanishad, you may think, oh, you know what, who has seen Indra, who has seen Virochana, who has seen Brahma? The stories are all from somewhere. We have seen an example of these stories even in our Guru Parampara, right? Even in the story of our Acharyas, we see examples of this, right? Can anybody think of an example of this from the story of one of our Acharyas?
Bhashyakara, when he went 18 times to Tirukashti Navi to learn the Ashtakshara mantra.
Okay, excellent. Okay, very good. Very good. So that's the bit that we are going to talk. We're going to take a look at, and we're going to understand some nuances about that. But that's very good. The story that this Indra and Virochana episode, the story that reminds us of is the perseverance of Swami Ramanuja. Okay, so the story goes that that Ramanuja was looking to learn the meaning of the Ashtaksharam and the Charama Slokam. Okay. Now remember that Ramanuja had already learned the actual words of the Ashtaksharam, the Dvayam and Charama Slokam. He had already learned. What he was looking to learn was the meaning of those words, of those mantras. Okay. And when he was trying to learn the meaning of those mantras, he had to go through a lot of hardships before he could actually learn those mantras. Some of you may already know the story, some of you may not, so we'll go through the story. But before that, we have a quiz for you. Okay, let's see. I think most of you will know the answer to this question. It's a very simple question. How many acharyas did Swami Ramanuja have?
Five.
Five acharyas. Okay, okay, 5 acharyas. Can someone tell me? Okay, you should all jump in at the same time. Someone raise your hand, and one of you tell me who were the 5 acharyas. Okay,
Well,
I see Anirudh Raga. Okay, maybe we'll go one. I think 4 or 5 of you have raised your hand, so we'll go one by one. Anirudh raised your hand. So can you tell me about who was the first acharya of Swami Ramanuja? Pirinambigal. Okay, then Raghav raised his hand. Tell me one more acharya.
Govinda Bhattar.
No, Govinda Bhattar was not. He was one of the Sishyas.
Tirmalai Nambi.
Periya Tirumala Nambi. Very good. Okay, so Periya Tirumala Nambigal. Okay, then I have Sriman. I think Sriman has raised his hand. Yeah.
Tirukashti Nambi.
Tirukashti Nambi. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Then who else is raised? Anyone else wants to tell us the last 2?
Alamandar.
Alavandar was not a direct Acharya. We'll talk about Alavandar in a second. That's a good one. That's a good. Sorry?
Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar.
Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar, excellent. And the last one?
Tirukkoshiyur Nambi.
Tirukkoshiyur Nambi has already been said.
Tirukkachi Nambi.
Thirumalayanda. Tirukkachi Nambigal was also again not a direct Acharya of Swami. He was instrumental in guiding Swami Ramanujar. But yes, the 5 Acharyas of Swami Ramanujar were Periya Nambigal, Periya Tirumala Nambigal, Tirukkottiyur Nambi, Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar, and Thirumalayanda. Okay. Can someone tell me what are the things that he learned, that Swami Ramanujar learned from each of these acharyas?
Periya Nambi, he learned like most of the basic stuff and got Samashayanam. Periya Tirumala Nambi, he learned Ramayanam. Tirukkoshiyur Nambi, he learned the Ashtakshara Mantram of the Artham of the Ashtakshara Mantram.
Meaning, yes, good.
And then Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar or Thirumalayanda taught him like the Thiruvaimoni and meaning, and then Thirumalayanda or Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar taught him the other of the Nalayara Divya Prabandham.
So you're almost there. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Excellent. Very good. Very good. I think one of you, Vishnu, I think you have your hand raised. Did you mean to raise your hand for some other question or? Oh, okay, good. Okay, sorry. Okay, I just want to make sure that you had a chance to say something. Okay, good. Okay, that is very good. So Periya Nambigal is the Acharyan who, at whose feet Swami Ramanujar had his Panchasamskaram. So along with that, he had learnt the mantrams, right? The 3 rahasyams, the Mula Mantram, Dvayam, and Charma Shlokam had already been taught to him by Periya Nambigal. And where did he teach him this, or where did this Samashayanam happen?
Madurantagam.
Madurantagam, excellent, very good. Okay. Okay. Periya Tirumala Nambi was the person who taught Swami Ramanuja Srimad Ramayanam. Tirukkottiyur Nambi is the person who taught Swami Ramanuja the meaning of the Ashtaksharam and the inner meaning of the Charma Shlokam, and that's the core of the act of Sharanagati that Swami Ramanuja learned from Tirukkottiyur Nambi. Thiruvaranga Perumal Arayar is the one who taught him the text of the Thiruvaimozhi. Thirumalayanda taught him the meaning of the Thiruvaimozhi. Okay, so these were the five acharyas. Now all of these 5 acharyas, their acharyan was Swami Alavandar. Okay, now the Alavandar was Swami Ramanuja, as you all know, had never actually met Alavandar in his actual life when he was alive. He saw Alavandar only after Alavandar had reached Paramadam. But Alavandar had instructed these 5 Sishyas of his to make sure that all of these pieces of information would go to Ramanuja, because he knew that Ramanuja would be the one who would be the leading light of our Sampradayam. So Alavandar had made sure that these things are passed on to him. But one of you said Alavandar is Swami Ramanuja's Acharya. That is also true in a way. And I don't want to take up too much time outside of what the main stories that we're talking about today. But in the Guru Parampara, there is a small incident in the interaction between Ramanuja and Thirumalayanda. Thirumalayanda was teaching him the meaning of the Thiruvaimozhi. He was giving him the meaning of some of the verses, and Ramanuja said, Acharyan, I feel like for this particular verse, you can give a different type of meaning. You gave what you taught me makes sense, but I think you can think about it in a slightly different way, and this meaning is even more enjoyable. That's what Ramanuja said to Thirumalayanda. Thirumalayanda said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then later on, when Thirumalayanda was talking to Tirukkottiyur Nambi and Periya Tirumala Nambi, and he related this incident. He narrated that incident to Nambi and Tirukkottiyur Nambi, saying, I was teaching Ramanuja the meaning of this verse, and Ramanuja said, why can't we think about it in a different way? And Periya Tirumala Nambi and Tirukkottiyur Nambi said, you know what? This is exactly the meaning that I have heard already from Alavandar. Ramanuja had never met Alavandar, but he was able to, because of Alavandar's grace, he was able to get all those things that Alavandar might have instructed him himself. He got it directly through Alavandar's grace, and they were astonished that Alavandar, the meaning that Alavandar proposed was something that was coming directly from Ramanujan, even though he had not learned directly from Alavandar. So Alavandar was in a way the teacher who was directing this whole thing to happen. Okay, because that was the way the sampradayam had to be developed. Anyway, so the story today is about Ramanujan and Tirukotiyur Nambi. The crux of the story you all know about. Okay, so the setting of the story is Tirukotiyur. Tirukotiyur is a wonderful Divyadesham. If any of you has not already been there, you should go there and see the Perumal there. What is the name of the Perumal in Tirukotiyur? Does anybody know? Swaminarayan. The Perumal is called Swaminarayan. That that Divyadesham, it's called Tirukotiyur or Goshtipuram. It's called Goshtipuram because in the Puranas it says that Hiranya was constantly attacking this town, and all the sages and everybody got together as a committee, and they wanted to seek the blessings of Perumal to protect this town. So Goshti means committee, and so this Goshtiur, Goshtipuram means the place where this committee was formed to seek the blessings of Perumal, and that's why it is called Tirukotiyur. Okay, and Tirukotiyur as a Divyadesham is something that Alvars have spoken very highly about. We have even talked about this before in one of our sessions. Periyalvar talks about Tirukotiyur as a Divyadesham where every individual who lives in Tirukotiyur, he says they have a lot of love not only for Perumal, they have a lot of love for Bhagavatas also, and that's why Tirukotiyur is supposed to be one of the preeminent Divyadeshams, and it was the setting of the place where Ramanujan got the instruction of the meaning of these rahasyams. So as important as Madhurantakam is important because that is where Ramanujan got his Samashanam, Tirukotiyur is important because that is where Ramanujan learned the meaning of these verses. So what happened was Periyanambigal, who was the main Acharyan of Swami Ramanujan, he said, Ramanuja, it is time now for you to go to Tirukotiyur. Go to Tirukotiyur Nambi and learn the meaning of the rahasyams, because that is what is going to tell you about what is the true nature of Sharanagati. That is how you will make sure that this Sampradayam is brought together through Sharanagati. So you have to go and learn this. So Ramanujan went to Tirukotiyur. Tirukotiyur Nambi, his name was the name that his parents had given him was Tirukkuruhe Piran. He was called Tirukkuruhe Piran. In a way, he was named after Nammalvar. Okay, that was the name that he was given. So Ramanujan went to Tirukotiyur, and Periyanambi had told him, go to Tirukotiyur Nambi and ask him for this teaching, right? So Ramanujan went to the town and asked the people in the town, please, can you tell me what is where does Tirukotiyur Nambi live? So the people there said, what, Tirukotiyur Nambi? I never heard of somebody called Tirukotiyur Nambi. It's not, I'm not sure who you're talking about. And he asked a lot of people and said, can I go to Tirukotiyur Nambi's house? And he said, nobody knew Tirukotiyur Nambi. But Periyanambi had told Ramanujan that this great person, a very illustrious person called Tirukotiyur Nambi lives in Tirukotiyur. But people living in that very town did not even know he existed. That's because Tirukotiyur Nambi was so engrossed in thoughts about Perumal. He was so engrossed in the meaning of all of the scriptures that he always kept to himself. Nobody even knew about the existence of such a great individual in Tirukotiyur. So somebody said, there is this person called Tirukkuruhe Piran. We always hear the words of the Vedas coming from his house. Maybe that's the person you're looking for. And immediately Ramanujan realized that is the person he has to go meet. That is the person that Periyanambi had asked him to meet. The moment Ramanujan heard that this is the house of Tirukotiyur Nambi that I want to meet, he immediately fell flat on the ground and he started prostrating just to the house, not even to Tirukotiyur Nambi. And Ramanuja, by that time, Ramanuja was relatively famous, right? People knew about Ramanuja throughout the lands. So Ramanuja, the moment he heard the name of the moment he heard the address of this person, he fell on the ground and started prostrating. That is how the people in that, even in that town, realized that the person living in that house must be so great. That if Ramanuja is falling on the ground and prostrating just at the mere the name, that's how they realize that this man is a great man. So that's how our acharyas, they always kept to themselves. They never made a big deal out of their own existence. The knowledge that they had was so great that they felt that they had to protect it, and they never went and made a big deal of the things that they need. So when Ramanuja fell on the ground, prostrating to his house, that's when even people living in that town realized such a great man was living in that town. Anyway, so Tirukotiyur Nambi was there. Ramanuja went in there and he called out, saying, "Please, I have come to learn the meaning of the rahasyams from you." Tirukotiyur Nambi said, he did not even respond. Then Ramanuja said, "Periyanambigal has sent me here. I am a Shishya of Periyanambi. Please, I would like to learn this from you." That's when even Tirukotiyur Nambi even responded, saying, "Oh, okay, what do you want?" And he asked the question, and Ramanuja said, "I want to learn this." Tirukotiyur Nambi said, "No, sorry, I can't teach you this. Please go. Maybe some other time." So just like Brahma told Indra and Virochana, gave them some, first of all, he had them work in his house for 32 years and then gave them some half knowledge. Similarly, Tirukotiyur Nambi said, yeah, maybe next time. So Ramanuja went back. So it was hard enough to find Tirukotiyur Nambi. Sorry, that's a slide that was supposed to be there, and I was telling you about how he found the home of Tirukotiyur Nambi. But anyway, he said, no, maybe next time, and he went away. And Ramanuja went back. Now remember, as I keep saying, in those days, there is no easy mode of transport, right? You have to walk. Going from Srirangam, so this is the image on the left, going from Srirangam to Tirukotiyur is not an easy deal. Even today, it's, if you have to walk non-stop, according to Google Maps, if you walk non-stop from Srirangam to Tirukotiyur, it's not possible to walk non-stop, right? If you walk non-stop, you'll get there in 21 hours. Right, at the same pace. Now, if somebody walking will obviously take rest, has to do something, then it used to take several days. And obviously, Ramanuja had to stop for his anushthanams. He could not, leave any of those things. Imagine how long it must have taken. So Ramanuja did this arduous journey. It was really hard. He did this journey 18 times over. Like every time he would come with an eagerness. He would say, "Okay, can I please learn the meaning of the Tirumantaram and the Charamashlokam? Please, I would like to learn." Tirukotiyur Nambi would say, "Yeah, maybe next time. Sorry, I cannot tell you now. Please go away." So he kept going and coming in 18 times, and Ramanujan became sadder and sadder and sadder. Not because he had no energy, because this is the person who was going to walk all the way to Kashmir, right, to get the information to write the Srivashram. So he was getting sad not because he was losing energy. He was getting sad because he thought that this great knowledge was not going to be made available to him. See, in those days, one thing you should remember, and again, this goes back to the concept of how we should learn. In those days, when unique things like the meaning of the Ashtaksharam, if they were to teach you the meaning of the Ashtaksharam, they would make sure that nobody other than the guru and the sishyan, the teacher and the student, nobody other than the teacher and the student could be in the room. They would not even teach it to two students at the same time. They would only teach it to one student at a time. And many teachers, what they would do is, if they finally thought that you were good enough to learn, they would take you inside the house. They would come out from the back door, lock the front door, put a big lock on their front door, come back through the back door, and then teach you secretly, because they thought this knowledge was so important. They did not want anybody to know about it. That is why even someone as great as Ramanuja, remember I told you before, right, that Alavandar has instructed these 5 people to pass on this information to Ramanuja. Even though he has that instruction, even though he knows that Ramanuja is so great, Tirukotiyur Nambi tested him for 18 times, making him walk not just once, right? So if he went 18 times to Tirukotiyur, it means he did this journey 36 times, right? He has to go once and come back. So he's done this. He put him through all this difficulty, and finally, once when Tirukotiyur Nambi had come to Srirangam, some of the elders there said, "You know what? Why are you putting Ramanuja through so much of difficulty? You know he's a worthy student. You have to give it him." And then, but Tirukotiyur Nambi said, "Look, this is the way of the Shastras. We cannot give something that is so worthy, that is so valuable. We cannot give it away just like that. Okay, we have to be careful about it. That is what we have to do. There is no option but to do that. Okay." So anyway, at the end of this 18 trips, Tirukotiyur Nambi said, "You know what? Please, next time when you come, I will give you this knowledge." He said, "Don't come, come all by yourself. I'll not give it to anybody other than you." But anyway, the story goes that Ramanujan brought Kurutalvan and Mudaliyandan, and anyway, the knowledge was given to Ramanujan. Finally, after all these, after all this difficulty, the Ramanuja's penance paid off. Okay, so again, just like Indra took a lot of effort and 101 years of time to learn the true knowledge, Ramanujan walked up and down from Srirangam to Tirukotiyur 18 times to understand the meaning of the Ashtaksharam and Charama Shlokam. And the depth of the meaning of the Charama Shlokam is that Perumal will protect us no matter what. So if you do Sharanagati at the feet of Perumal, we can get what we want. So that piece of knowledge, in those days, the Acharyas thought that was extremely, extremely valuable information that cannot be passed on to everybody. Okay, so Ramanuja had to, even somebody as great as Ramanuja had to go through this deep penance to get to know this information. Okay, now what happened next? Ramanuja, so Tirukotiyur Nambi explained all these. Finally took him aside, gave him all this knowledge, told him what the meaning of the Ashtaksharam is, told him what the meaning of the Charama Shlokam is, and blessed him with this knowledge. What happened next?
Did he teach it to Kurutalvan and Mudaliyandan?
Yes. Okay. And but before that, Tirukotiyur Nambi took a commitment from Ramanuja, right? Because as I was saying, until that point, they would not even teach this to two students at the same time. They would teach it only to one student at a time. And Tirukotiyur Nambi said, "I have given you this knowledge, but you are not to give it to anybody. Okay? I have given it to you because I think you are worthy. You cannot give it to anybody at all." Okay? What happened then was, yeah.
So if Tirukotiyur Nambi gave those information to Ramanujan, is it that Tirukotiyur Nambi trusts Ramanujan that he won't tell anybody?
Not only that, it's more than that. Tirukotiyur Nambi had convinced himself that Ramanuja had the eagerness to learn it. That he made Ramanuja walk 18 times up and down, not because he wanted to test if Ramanuja will tell other people or not. That is a secondary thing. But before that, the more important thing is he wanted to test his perseverance, right? As I said, that's the instruction that the Shastras give to teachers for anything that is important, and this is considered the most important. He gave it to him because he trusted that Ramanuja was worthy of that. I mean, from our perspective, Ramanuja is obviously worthy, but Tirukotiyur Nambi still wanted to demonstrate to the world that this is so important that even if you are Ramanuja, I would test you, is what Tirukotiyur Nambi wanted to say. Okay, so what happened next was that he took that commitment, but Ramanuja went ahead, despite Tirukotiyur Nambi telling him that no, you cannot do this. Ramanuja went ahead and explained the meaning of the Mula Mantram and the Charama Shlokam to a very select set of disciples. Okay, so there are all these stories that Ramanuja went on top of the Gopuram and then shouted it out to everybody all around and all that. Those stories are not true. Okay, those stories are certainly not true, and they're not even logical, because, as I said before, he had already learned the mantras in Madhurantakam many years ago. At this point in Tirukoti, he was not learning the mantras. The meaning of the mantras are so difficult to understand. Even if you were to sit next to each other and explain it, it's not easy to understand. In those days, there was no mic, there was nothing. If he was to go to the top of the Gopuram and yell it to people, nobody would have even heard it, leave alone understand. So the information that he passed on was to a very select set of Shishyas. Okay, the select set of Shishyas that Ramanujan had already, just like Tirukotiyur Nambi was testing Ramanujan had already tested these people and found that they are very, very eager to learn this. All Ramanuja did was that he made it slightly more accessible to people. In those days, it was very, very inaccessible. He made it slightly more accessible to people, and that's what Ramanuja did. Okay, so this information. So this is not to say that after that point, after Ramanuja gave it to more Sishyas, the need for perseverance or the importance of perseverance has not gone down. It's just that it tells you the grace the compassion that Ramanujan had towards his Sishyas, but he had already tested people for their eagerness to learn this. Okay, so on this topic, a quick question for all of you guys. After this incident happened, what name did Tirukotiyur Nambigal give to Sri Ramanujan? Emberumanar. Okay. Why he gave him the name Emberumanar? That's the correct answer. And why did he give him the name Emberumanar? What is the meaning of the name Emberumanar, and why did he give him that name?
The meaning of Emberumanar is like, even though he doesn't go to Srivaikuntha, he makes other people like
Jivatmas go to Srivaikuntha.
Yeah, in a way, not precisely so, but in a way. So Tirukotiyur Nambi, so what happened was Tirukotiyur Nambi came and asked Raman, you know what, I told you, you cannot tell this to anybody. You've taken these, this handful of 2 or 3 people and you've told this to them. How can you do that? You've sort of you've disobeyed me, right after I've given you this knowledge. Do you know what will happen? Ramanuja said, yes, I know, but if I don't, because it's my Acharya's Nemanam, I have flouted my Acharya's Nemanam, and if that happens, I will go to Naragam. So Ramanuja said, despite that you have done this. So Ramanuja said, it's okay if one person like me goes to Naragam. These people, I have taught them the true way to go to Perumal. You can go, they can perform Sharanagati and they can go to Moksha. So Tirukotiyur Nambi was so moved. He said, I have known from the scriptures that Emberuman is full of grace. Emberuman is Perumal, right? That Perumal is full of grace. You have exceeded Perumal in grace, and therefore you have exceeded even Perumal, so you become Emberumana. You are somebody who is constantly thinking about the well-being of his Sishyas. So I name you Emberumanar, and from that day, this whole Sampradayam was called Emberumanar Darshana. Okay? So that's why Ramanuja became Emberumanar, and this picture is that of Tirukotiyur Nambi and Swami Bhashyakarar in the Kshetram of Tirukotiyur. This is Bhashyakarar's image in Tirukotiyur, and the person in the middle is Tirukotiyur Nambi, who was Bhashyakarar's Acharya. Okay, so again, just like the story of Indra and Virochana, the story of Ramanuja and Tirukotiyur Nambi tells us how we should learn. Ramanuja did not rest on his laurels and say, "Oh, I'm a great Acharya, so I should get this knowledge immediately." No, he said, I will be worthy of this knowledge only when my Acharya deems me to be worthy. Okay, so I will wait until my Acharya is willing to give me this knowledge. Okay, so he went through that process of persevering to get this piece of information. Okay, so before we finish, of course, we don't have much time, but whenever we think of the town of Tirukotiyur, of course, there are all these stories from 1,000 years ago when Ramanuja lived and what happened in Tirukotiyur then. But we have talked about this Swami even in a previous session. Whenever we think of Tirukotiyur, we should also think of Tirukotiyur Swami, who lived just over 100 years ago at the time of the 42nd Raiya Singer. Tirukotiyur Swami was everything, and Alvar describes the greatness of the people of Tirukotiyur. Tirukotiyur Swami embodied all of those things, and I feel that it is my pleasure and privilege to talk about Tirukotiyur Swami, because Adiyan's Kalksheba Acharya was Tirukotiyur Swami's own son. So Tirukotiyur Swami was somebody that our Acharyas in the recent times look up to as somebody who is one of the greatest Vaishnava Acharyas of our times, and it all falls in place. The way Alvar talked about Tirukotiyur, the way our Acharyas in Tirukotiyur have lived, the same way was the way Tirukotiyur Swami also lived. But anyway, I just could not sort of resist the temptation to talk about Tirukotiyur Swami since we are talking about Tirukotiyur. But anyway, what do we take away from today's stories? I just want to leave you with a thought. I don't have all the answers to the questions, but questions that may come up when we think about these stories. But I want to leave all of you with a thought, right? You're all youngsters. You're all sort of starting out in your journey of learning about our Sampradayam, learning about Perumal, and all of these things. There's one thing we need to remember. We all live in the age of Google, right? If you want to learn about Perumal, if you want to learn about the Upanishads, if you want to learn about our Sampradayam, the temptation is to do what I'm showing you on the screen, right? You go into Google and say, oh, what is the meaning of the Upanishads? Unlike Indra being tested by Brahma, unlike Swami Ramanujan being tested by Tirukotiyur Nambi, Google is not going to test us, right? Google will immediately give you some answer, right? But it is our choice whether we want to be Indra or be Virochana. Virochana went and asked Brahma like we will go and ask Google. Brahma readily gave him an answer. Google will readily give us an answer. Virochana became very happy and went home and started taking care of his body, thinking that is an Atma. If we rely on Google that way, then we may get the wrong answers. Okay? So there is an alternative to that. The alternative to that is that we have to persevere. We have to go to an Acharyan, always seek out a guru and get the knowledge from the Acharyan directly. The easy way to getting knowledge may not be the right way to get knowledge. The easy way to getting knowledge may not even give us the right knowledge. So going to an Acharya and say, oh, you know what, I have to go to India, I have to make sure the Acharyan is willing to teach me, I have to ask, they will ask me questions, I have to answer. All those things are part of the process of getting the right knowledge. Okay, so the Acharyan will start with your parents, start with the people who are knowledgeable in your family, start with asking them, get their grace, get their blessings, and learn through them. Going through the easy option of getting knowledge that may be available in some book that you pick up, available in Google, that is not the way for generations together, the true knowledge has been passed on. Okay. That's why the Shastras say, Acharya Daiva Vidya Vidita Sadishtam Prapat. Meaning that any knowledge, if you get it from Google, it's useless. You have to get it from an Acharya. Okay. Once you learn from an Acharya, maybe if you forget the words to some stotram, looking it up on Google and then refreshing your memory, those types of things is okay. But if that is the only true correct source of knowledge is one that you get through the sort of perseverance that Indra did, through the sort of perseverance that Swami Ramanujan did. Okay, so there is no alternative to that. Okay, so that is the first thing. And second, and of course, the main message is persevere to seek knowledge. If you persevere, you will get the right knowledge, and you can always be sure that what our acharyas teach us, there is no doubt that is the right thing. Okay, so with that, we will stop today's class with that. Unless or maybe you guys have any questions or anything. If we don't, we can say Acharya Taniyan and wrap it up. Any questions? Okay, good. Should we say Acharya Taniyan? Sriranganath Shatago Vayatindra Drishtam Lakshmi Razam Sharajit Karuni Kapatram Srirangavir Raghurat Shatago Bhakrudyam Vedantu Dejigayatindra Maham Prapadye Srimadrangha Shadadajam Vivaral Labdhagaman Tadvayam Srimad Viraraghut Vahadya Sharajit Padar Vindashayam श्रीमद्वेदवतं जदेशिकेते कारुण्यवीक्षास्पदं सेवे रङ्गधुरीणशासनवशं नारायणं योगिनं वेदान्तदेशिकेति शकटाक्षलब्धत्रय्यन्तजारमनवद्यगुणं बुधाग्र्यं नारायणाद्येतिदुर्जकृपाभिषिक्तं श्रीरङ्गनाथयतिशेखरमाश्रयामः श्रीमते श्रीवंशटगोपश्रीवेदान्तदेशिकेतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः श्रीमते श्रीलक्ष्मीनृसिंहदिव्यपादुका सेवक श्रीवंशटगोपश्रीनारायणयतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः श्रीमते श्रीवंशटगोपश्रीरङ्गनाथयतीन्द्रमहादेशिकाय नमः. Thank you, everyone.